Hey everyone, if you love scary stories, hit that subscribe button and join the creepy crew. Also, don't forget to like a video and tell me in the comments what time are you watching this now. I had always believed that the lake held secrets that only the darkest nights could reveal. After years of personal turmoil and the crushing weight of shattered dreams, I desperately needed a change, a retreat from the chaos that had become my everyday life. When I first heard about Blackwater Lake, a secluded stretch of water tucked away in the heart of a forgotten woodland, I felt an inexplicable pull. It was as if the lake promised silence and solace, a place where the world's noise would finally fade into whispers. I didn't know then that my search for peace would plunge me into a nightmare I could never have imagined. I arrived at the lake house on a cold, overcast afternoon. The house was a relic of a bygone era, its weathered wooden siding and sagging roof hinting at years of neglect. It stood at the edge of the lake, surrounded by dense forests whose towering pines and gnarled oaks loomed like silent sentinels. The water itself was an obsidian mirror, reflecting a sky heavy with clouds. A chill ran down my spine as I stepped out of the car and took in the desolate beauty of the place. There was no sign of life, only the whisper of the wind through the trees and the soft lapping of water against the shore. Inside, the house was dimly lit by the weak glow of afternoon light filtering through grimy windows. Every room was filled with the scent of damp wood and old memories. I could almost hear echoes of laughter and long-forgotten conversations, remnants of happier times. A small envelope lay on a dusty table in the entryway. There was no return address, only a neatly scrawled note that read, "Welcome. May you find what you seek." I tucked the envelope into my jacket pocket, unaware that it would come to symbolize the threshold between the known and the unknown. The first night passed without incident, yet an uneasy feeling gnawed at me as I lay in bed. I was too tired to analyze it, attributing the discomfort to unfamiliar surroundings and a mind still haunted by past regrets. But as darkness deepened, so did the silence of the house, until it became an almost tangible presence. I drifted off to sleep to the sound of the wind, unaware that the true symphony of the night was just beginning. I awoke later in the night to a soft, persistent tapping. It was not the natural patter of rain against the window, nor the rustling of branches outside, but a deliberate, almost rhythmic sound coming from somewhere deep within the house. At first, I lay still, listening intently as the tapping moved from one wall to another, as if a hidden hand were tracing its way along the wood. My heart pounded in the oppressive silence. I rose slowly and crept through the darkened corridors, flashlight in hand, each step stirring the dust of forgotten days. The sound led me to a narrow hallway, where the tapping abruptly stopped. I paused, breath held, but no answer came, the unsettling memory of that gentle, deliberate beat. The next morning, I tried to shake off the night's events as a trick of my imagination. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by a window overlooking the lake. The surface of the water rippled softly in the early light, and for a moment I almost believed in the promise of peace that had drawn me here. But as I sipped, I noticed something odd along the far shore, a figure standing motionless, shrouded by mist, watching the house with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I blinked, and the figure was gone, leaving only the memory of hollow eyes and an inexplicable feeling of being observed. Over the next few days, small, inexplicable occurrences began to punctuate my isolation. I would hear hushed whispers echoing through the halls, words too indistinct to understand yet laden with sorrow. Objects would shift ever so slightly when I wasn't looking, and I began to notice faint, almost imperceptible footprints in the dust on the floor trail, leading from room to room, vanishing into the darkness beneath the stairs. I questioned my own sanity, wondering if the isolation was playing tricks on me. Yet, with each passing night, the disturbances grew bolder, more insistent. One evening, as a violent storm began to rage outside, I discovered a hidden door in the back of the house that I had never noticed before. It was inconspicuous, a seam in the paneling, a slight gap behind a row of old photographs. Curiosity overcame my dread, and I pushed the door open. Beyond lay a narrow staircase descending into darkness. With only the flicker of my dying flashlight to guide me, I ventured down the stairs. At the bottom was a small, cold room that reeked of damp earth and decay. In the center of the room stood a weathered wooden chest, its surface scarred by time. I hesitated before opening it, feeling that I was intruding upon a secret not meant for the living. Inside the chest, I found a collection of objects that defied explanation: a bundle of yellowed letters tied with a frayed ribbon, a cracked porcelain doll with eyes that seemed to follow my every move, and a set of old, rusted keys. Each item was shrouded in a palpable sadness, as if they carried the weight of generations of sorrow. I leafed through one of the letters, reading fragments of a story about loss, betrayal, and a curse that had haunted the family for decades. The words, though faded, seethed with an energy that made my blood run cold. I could not shake the feeling that by disturbing these relics, I had awakened something that had long slumbered beneath the surface of Blackwater Lake. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in the house grew increasingly oppressive. The once quiet solitude became punctuated by strange noises, footsteps when no one was there, the sound of a door creaking open in the dead of night, and voices that whispered my name. I began to see fleeting shadows in the corners of my vision, dark figures that melted away as soon as I turned to look. My sleep was plagued by vivid, unsettling dreams in which I wandered through endless corridors of a crumbling mansion, chased by faceless figures whose mournful eyes pierced my soul. One particularly harrowing night, I was roused by a blood-curdling scream that shattered the silence of the house. I bolted upright in bed, heart-hammering, and listened as the scream echoed down the hallway. It was a sound of pure terror, a cry that spoke of unimaginable horror. I raced to the window and peered out into the torrential rain. For a moment, I thought I saw a woman standing on the deck of the house, a spectral figure drenched in rain, her eyes wild with despair. But as quickly as she appeared, she vanished into the storm, leaving only the sound of the wind and my racing heartbeat. Determined to uncover the truth behind these events, I began to research the history of Blackwater Lake and the house that clung to its edge. I discovered that the property had once belonged to a prominent family whose fortune had been built on dark secrets and whispered scandals. Tragedy had struck repeatedly: a mysterious disappearance here, a violent accident there, and the family's legacy was forever tainted by loss and sorrow. Local lore spoke of a curse, a malevolent force that dwelled within the lake and the surrounding woods, feeding on the grief and despair of those who dared to trespass upon its domain. The more I learned, the more I realized that my presence at the lake house was no mere coincidence. One night, as a storm outside reached a fever pitch, I found myself unable to sleep. I crept out of bed and wandered the halls of the house, driven by an insatiable need to understand what was happening. In the dim light of a single lamp, I followed the sound of dripping water until weeks passed and life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Yet the memory of Blackwater Lake haunted me relentlessly, its whispers echoing in every quiet moment, its dark presence a constant specter in my mind. I tried to forget, to bury the terror beneath layers of time and distance. But some nights I would wake to the sound of tapping, and I would shudder as I recalled the chilling words of that mysterious journal. I later learned that I was not the only one affected by the lake's curse. Others, drawn to the solitude of Blackwater Lake by their own broken hearts and desperate need for escape, had experienced similar horrors, disappearances, inexplicable encounters, and whispers that spoke of ancient, vengeful forces. The stories, passed down in hushed tones among the locals, painted a picture of a lake that was alive with sorrow, a place where the past never truly died, and where the echoes of tragedy reverberated through every ripple of water and creak of wood. In time, I came to understand that some wounds never fully heal, and that the scars of Blackwater Lake would remain with me forever. I tried to piece together the fragments of my shattered reality, to find meaning in the madness, but the answers eluded me like shadows in the night. The curse of the lake was not something that could be reasoned away or ignored. It was a part of the landscape, an eternal reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the edge of human understanding. Now, whenever I find myself alone in the quiet hours before dawn, I can still hear the distant tapping, the echo of footsteps on creaking floorboards, and the faint whispers of a long-forgotten past. I know that the lake continues to wait, its dark waters holding secrets that no one is meant to uncover. And though I have moved on, tried to build a new life far from Blackwater Lake, the memory of that place and the curse that dwells there will always remain a part of me. For in the end, we are all haunted by something. Some of us by our own regrets and lost dreams, and others by forces beyond our control, ancient, relentless, and unforgiving. Blackwater Lake was a mirror to my own broken soul, a reminder that even in the search for solace, one might find only deeper, darker truths. And as long as the lake exists, shrouded in mist and mystery, its whispers will call out to the broken, promising that no one can ever truly escape the darkness that lies beneath. I have tried to forget, to leave behind the horrors of that fateful retreat, but the lake has a way of lingering in your memory. Its waters, as dark as a starless night, hide secrets that are better left undiscovered. And though I have found some measure of peace in my new life, I know that when the night grows silent and the wind whispers through the trees, the ghosts of Blackwater Lake will return to remind me that some curses are eternal. And so I write these words, not as a plea for sympathy, but as a warning. For those who seek refuge in isolation, who dare to confront their inner demons by escaping into nature's solitude, beware the call of the lake. It may promise healing and renewal, but hidden beneath its tranquil surface lies a darkness that will reach out and claim you when you least expect it. The curse of Blackwater Lake is not bound by time, and its whispering waters continue to lure the desperate, the broken, and the lost into its cold, unyielding embrace. There are nights when I wake in a cold sweat, convinced that I can hear the distant sound of that relentless tapping, a reminder that I am still marked, still a part of that accursed place. I have learned that some journeys lead not to salvation, but to a deeper understanding of the darkness within and without. And while I have moved forward, I know that the memory of Blackwater Lake will forever cast its long shadow over my life, a silent, persistent reminder that the past is never truly gone and that some secrets are best left undisturbed. I had always been drawn to mysteries, to places where the veil between the known and the unknown grew thin, where every creaking floorboard whispered secrets of the past. After years of feeling trapped in a monotonous routine life filled with regret and longing, I decided that a change was inevitable. I needed an escape, a chance to explore the uncharted corners of my own curiosity. It was then that I learned about Blackwood Manor, an abandoned estate nestled deep in the heart of an ancient forest. The estate had long been the subject of local legend, spoken of in hushed tones in nearby towns. They said that the manor was cursed, that it held within its walls the echoes of a tragic past, and that those who dared to enter would never be the same again. I dismissed such tales as mere folklore, but my own inner voice, that unquenchable thirst for answers, would not let me ignore the call. I arrived at Blackwood Manor on a cold, gray afternoon. The overcast sky hung low, heavy with unspoken promise. As I drove along a winding, neglected road flanked by towering, moss-covered trees. The estate emerged from the fog like a spectral vision, a once grand building now cloaked in decay. Its stone walls were pitted and worn, and the tall, arched windows, darkened by years of neglect, seemed to watch me with silent, unyielding eyes. The wrought iron gate creaked in protest as I pushed it open, and an eerie hush descended upon me as I stepped onto the overgrown path leading to the entrance. The manor exuded an air of melancholic beauty. Ivy snaked its way up the walls, softening the harsh lines of the crumbling facade. In the courtyard, the remnants of a fountain lay silent and broken, its water long since evaporated. I paused for a moment, taking in the haunting splendor of the scene, feeling both drawn to and repelled by the specter of the past. Every step I took on the cracked stone seemed to echo with memories, as if the manor itself were recalling the laughter, tears, and secrets of those who had once lived within. Inside, the manor was shrouded in a deep, pervasive silence. The grand foyer, once the heart of lively gatherings and extravagant celebrations, was now a cavern of shadow and dust. Moonlight filtered in through the broken roof, casting long, ethereal beams that danced upon the faded wallpaper and splintered furniture. I moved slowly through the corridors, my footsteps the only sound in an otherwise oppressive quiet. There was an inexplicable chill in the air, a subtle reminder that this place had witnessed unspeakable sorrow. In one of the many forgotten rooms, I discovered a small study, its once elegant desk now burdened with layers of dust and decay. Among the scattered papers, I found a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and stained by time. My heart quickened as I carefully opened it, revealing the desperate, uneven handwriting of someone who had once called Blackwood Manor home. The entries chronicled a tale of love lost, betrayal, and an insidious darkness that had slowly seeped into the soul of the estate. The writer spoke of strange voices in the night, of shadowy figures lurking in the halls, and of an overwhelming sense of foreboding that had driven them to the brink of madness. Every word was imbued with raw emotion and palpable despair, a chronicle of a life unraveling under the weight of a curse that refused to be ignored. That night, I set up my small camp in one of the lesser rooms of the manor. With only a flickering lantern to keep the darkness at bay, I spent the hours of the night reading the journal, absorbing the writer's tormented confessions. The words seemed to reverberate off the walls, intertwining with the soft groans of the ancient building. As the hours wore on, I began to feel that I was not alone in my vigil. There were subtle sounds of faint tapping on the floorboards, a whisper of movement just beyond the reach of the lantern's light that hinted at another presence. I tried to dismiss them as tricks of my imagination, the product of solitude and exhaustion, yet a deep part of me knew that the manor was alive with secrets. In the days that followed, my exploration of Blackwood Manor became an obsession. I wandered through room after room, each space revealing its own fragment of the estate's tragic history. In one dusty parlor, I discovered a faded portrait of a family, their eyes filled with a haunting sorrow. In another, I found a shattered mirror, its fragments scattered like broken memories across the floor. I noted small details, saw a set of footprints in a layer of dust that led to a hidden door, a lingering scent of lavender that seemed out of place in the decaying surroundings that only deepened my curiosity. One evening, while retracing my steps in a long-forgotten wing of the manor, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was a soft, deliberate tapping, distinct and rhythmic, echoing along the narrow corridor. I followed the sound until I reached a heavy wooden door that I had never noticed before. With trembling hands, I pushed it open and found myself in a narrow passageway that led to a secret chamber. The room was small and bare, its walls lined with shelves that held dusty tomes and brittle manuscripts. In the center of the room lay an ornate chest, its surface covered in intricate carvings that depicted scenes of sorrow and despair. Driven by an irresistible compulsion, I opened the chest. Inside, I found a collection of objects that defied explanation: a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon, a delicate porcelain figurine that had cracked over time, and a small, ornate key that glinted with an otherworldly light. Each item carried an air of mystery, as though it were a piece of a larger puzzle waiting to be solved. The letters told a fragmented story of a forbidden love and a family torn apart by secrets. The figurine, with its vacant eyes and fragile form, seemed to hold a silent plea for redemption. And the key pulsed with a quiet energy, hinting at hidden chambers and locked away memories deep within the manor's walls. That discovery set me on a new course. I began to scour the manor for any trace of a hidden room or secret passage that might be unlocked by the mysterious key. My search led me to the grand library, a vast, echoing space filled with towering shelves of ancient books. Between the rows, I found a peculiar door concealed behind a heavy velvet curtain. The key fit perfectly into the ornate lock, and with a slow, deliberate turn, the door creaked open to reveal a hidden study that had been untouched for decades. Inside the study, the air was thick with the weight of untold stories. Dust motes danced in the sliver of light that filtered through a small, high window. On a large oak desk, I found a collection of documents, photographs, and personal artifacts that painted a vivid picture of the manor's past. There were letters filled with desperate pleas and cryptic warnings, photographs of solemn faces frozen in time, and records of tragedies that had befallen the family who once lived there. As I sifted through the remnants of a life long gone, I felt as though I were piecing together the fragments of a shattered mirror-reach piece, reflecting a moment of beauty, loss, and unimaginable pain. Yet, for all the historical revelations, the manor's true secret remained elusive. Night after night, I was plagued by disturbing visions and inexplicable sounds. In the silence of the night, I would hear a soft, mournful lullaby drifting through the corridors, as if sung by unseen voices mourning a lost time. Shadows would flit across the walls, sometimes taking on the semblance of figures from the past figures, whose eyes seemed to hold both sorrow and warning. I began to question whether the manor itself was trying to communicate with me, whether its very essence was alive with a consciousness that spanned generations. One particularly stormy night, as rain battered the broken windows and wind howled through the empty halls, I experienced a moment that defied all rational explanation. I awoke suddenly, as if jolted by an unseen force, to find that the ornate key from the chest was missing from where I had left it. Panic gripped me as I searched the study, only to discover that the key had reappeared on the desk, positioned neatly atop a stack of old letters. It was as though the manor had orchestrated this small, inexplicable act just to remind me that I was not alone in my quest. The key now seemed less like a simple object and more like a talisman, imbued with a silent purpose that beckoned me deeper into the mystery. Compelled by a mixture of dread and unyielding curiosity, I began to document every strange occurrence. I kept a meticulous journal, recording the minutest detail, the exact placement of objects, the time when the tapping sounds would begin, the fleeting shapes of shadows that appeared and vanished in the blink of an eye. Each entry deepened my conviction that there was a grand hidden narrative at work, one that stretched back through the generations and was inextricably linked to the estate itself. As days blurred into nights, my solitude in the manor became both a sanctuary and a prison. I would sit for hours in the quiet library, poring over documents and trying to decipher the cryptic clues scattered throughout. I reached out to local historians and old residents, seeking any fragment of lore that might shed light on the curse that seemed to hang over Blackwood Manor. Their accounts varied. Some spoke of tragic love affairs, others of sudden, inexplicable deaths, and a few even mentioned sightings of ghostly figures wandering the grounds. But one thing was clear to all: the manor was a repository of untold sorrow and mystery, a place where the boundaries between life and death were perilously thin. One evening, driven by an insatiable need to understand the manor's hidden history, I followed a hunch that led me to the overgrown gardens at the back of the estate. The gardens were wild and untamed, nature having reclaimed what had once been carefully tended. Among the tangled vines and broken statues, I discovered a small stone pavilion, its surface weathered and worn. Inside, I found a series of inscriptions carved into the stone, a poem perhaps, lamenting lost love and the inexorable passage of time. The words were hauntingly beautiful, imbued with a melancholic wisdom that resonated deep within me. I spent hours there, reading the inscriptions over and over, trying to unlock the meaning hidden within their archaic verses. It was as if the garden itself was a living memorial to those who had suffered and perished within the walls of the manor. As my days at the manor wore on, the strange occurrences escalated. I began to notice a recurring phenomenon. Every night, just as the wind began to die down, I would hear a series of soft, rhythmic knocks coming from somewhere deep within the estate. They were not random, but followed a precise, almost musical pattern: 3 short knocks, followed by a pause, then 3 long knocks, and finally 3 short knocks again. I couldn't discern whether it was the house itself or something else entirely. The pattern haunted my dreams, invading my waking thoughts, urging me to seek its source. I resolved to follow the sound one night, armed with nothing but my flashlight and the steely determination of a man driven by curiosity. That night, the knocks echoed through the long, silent corridors of the manor, drawing me toward a closed door at the end of a narrow hallway. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle, and with a deep breath, I pushed it open. Beyond the door lay a small chamber, its walls lined with old photographs and newspaper clippings that chronicled the manor's troubled past. In the center of the room was an old gramophone, its horn dusty and its record spinning slowly. The soft, crackling notes of a long-forgotten melody filled the air, mingling with the rhythmic knocking that had drawn me here. I approached the gramophone, mesmerized by the haunting tune that seemed to tell a story of sorrow, loss, and the relentless passage of time. I spent that night in the chamber, listening to the melody and studying the images on the walls. The photographs depicted a family whose smiles had long since faded into the void, their eyes seeming to follow me with a mixture of longing and despair. I began to piece together fragments of their story, a tale of ambition, betrayal, and a curse that had doomed them to a fate of perpetual mourning. The more I learned, the more I felt a strange kinship with those long-departed souls, as if their tragedies mirrored my own hidden sorrows. Yet, even as I immersed myself in their story, I sensed that the manor was not done with me. Its presence was a constant, unyielding force that pressed against the edges of my consciousness, whispering that there were still secrets yet to be uncovered. In the weeks that followed, I found myself unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched not just by the ghosts of the past, but by something else entirely. At times, I caught glimpses of a dark figure moving silently through the corridors, always at the edge of my vision. Other times, I felt a cold hand brush against my shoulder when I was alone in a room, only to turn and find nothing there. I began to wonder if the manor was alive, if it harbored a consciousness that was as ancient as the stones from which it was built. Every unexplained sound, every shifting shadow, deepened my sense of isolation and heightened my curiosity. One stormy night, as thunder rumbled in the distance and lightning illuminated the crumbling walls, I experienced a moment of clarity that cut through the haze of fear and uncertainty. I sat in the library, the pages of the journal spread out before me, when a sudden gust of wind slammed the heavy door shut. In that instant, the lights flickered violently, and I heard a soft, mournful whisper that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the manor. "Remember us," it said, the words barely audible yet filled with an ancient sorrow. I felt a tear roll down my cheek, overcome by a mixture of grief and understanding. In that moment, I realized that the manor was not merely a repository of forgotten memories. It was a living testament to every lost dream, every unspoken regret, and every hope that had been crushed beneath the weight of time. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape washed clean, yet imbued with a lingering melancholy. I packed my belongings, the journal and key clutched tightly in my hand, determined to leave Blackwood Manor with answers and a sense of closure. As I drove away along the winding road, the manor receded into the distance, its silhouette merging with the darkened horizon. But even as the distance grew, I could still hear the soft tapping of footsteps, the gentle murmur of voices that promised that the estate's mysteries would never truly be forgotten. I later learned that I was not the only one who had been drawn to Blackwood Manor. In the years since I left, others had ventured to its lonely threshold, seeking solace, answers, or perhaps simply the thrill of confronting the unknown. Some returned with stories of ghostly apparitions and inexplicable sounds, while others were forever changed by the encounter, haunted by the persistent whisper of a curse that defied explanation. The legends grew, woven into the fabric of local lore, a tapestry of tragedy, beauty, and an enduring curiosity that beckoned the brave and the broken alike. As I reflect on my time at Blackwood Manor, I realize that the true horror was not in the supernatural forces that seemed to inhabit its walls, but in the realization that some mysteries are eternal. The manor had not been built to house ghosts. It was a mirror to my own inner turmoil, a reminder that curiosity, while a powerful force for discovery, can also lead us down paths from which there is no return. Now, whenever I find myself alone in the quiet hours before dawn, I can still hear the echo of that ancient melody, the soft knocks that led me to hidden chambers, and the whispered voices urging me to remember. I have come to understand that the call of the unknown is both a blessing and a curse, a reminder that in seeking answers, we may also awaken the very darkness we fear. And though I have moved on, building a new life far from Blackwood Manor, the memory of that place remains a silent, persistent echo in the depths of my soul. For those who dare to follow the call of curiosity, let my tale serve as both a warning and an invitation. There are realms where the past and present intertwine, where every stone and every whisper holds a story waiting to be told. But be warned, the journey into the heart of mystery is not for the faint of heart. It is a path fraught with sorrow and wonder, where the boundaries between reality and nightmare blur until they are indistinguishable. And once you cross that threshold, you may find that the darkness you sought to understand has, in turn, come to understand you. I write these words not in hope of unraveling the enigma of Blackwood Manor, but as a testament to the enduring power of curiosity. In every forgotten mansion, every abandoned estate, there lies a tale of love, loss, and the inexorable passage of time. And in those silent places, if you listen closely, you may hear the echoes of the past calling out to you, reminding you that some mysteries, no matter how deeply buried, are never truly lost. In the end, it is not the answers we find that define us, but the courage to seek them. And as long as there are those willing to confront the darkness, the stories of places like Blackwood Manor will continue to live on, whispered on the wind, carried in the rustle of leaves, and etched into the hearts of those who dare to dream.